Hi, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. This is Alyssa Briggs, and I am the director of the STEM Learning Ecosystem Community of Practice. And I have the really special honor this morning of being able to introduce to you again some people and some work that was first mentioned when we were together, I guess, just a little over a month ago in New Orleans. So we today will be offering you an overview of the Tulsa STEM Learning Ecosystem case study that was compiled by our friends at the PEAR Institute. So I wanted to take a moment and introduce to you the people who will be on presenting to you on today's call. We of course have Veronica Gonzalez here, who is the Deputy Director of the STEM Learning Ecosystem Community of Practice. From the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance, we have Exanne Black. And I wanted to just say a quick comment about Exanne. Exanne, of course, is the Executive Director of the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance. She has identified her team as the Nerd Herd. I'm not sure that that's a fair assessment of the amazing skills and work that they've done in Tulsa, but we can certainly understand why Dr. Gil Noam, Dr. Patricia Allen, and Dr. Kristen Lewis Warner were able to compile such an amazing report because they've done such incredible work in Tulsa. So another minute or two, I'd like to just spend telling you a little bit about the PEAR Institute, and Dr. Noam and the others will take over shortly, and you'll learn more from them directly. But Kristen Lewis Warner, the thing that I find so interesting about Kristen and the perspective that she brings to this work is that she's really interested in using living data to guide continuous improvement. And I think that's a very important piece for us to keep in mind as you learn about the work that they've done with this Tulsa case study. Dr. Patricia Allen is the Senior Research Manager at the PEAR Institute and also an instructor in psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. He has a PhD in experimental psychology from Tufts University and has incredible expertise in psychology and behavioral neuroscience research. So her work at PEAR is managing the implementation and development of PEAR's quantitative assessments that measure student outcomes in STEM. And of course, Dr. Gil Noam, who many of you had the pleasure of interacting with when we were in New Orleans. He is the founder and director of the PEAR Institute. And the PEAR Institute, as you may already know, focuses on two areas of research and practice: social emotional learning, which we've been talking about so much, and STEM. Dr. Noam is an associate professor at Harvard Medical School, and where his focus area is on prevention and resilience. Their full bios are contained in the case study, which there will be a link provided to you as part of this webinar. You are joining the webinar, by the way, in mute only mode at this point. When you have questions, you can raise your hand. And I also wanted to remind you that this webinar is being recorded, and we will share with you the link later in the week so that you can share it broadly with others. So I am going to now turn it over to Exanne and our colleagues from PEAR.
Hi, Alyssa. We're so excited for this opportunity to showcase the amazing work that the Harvard PEAR team has done. In 2013, some funders from the Tulsa area caught wind of the great work that Orange County was done, and thanks to the STEM Funders Network and ties, the Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance was launched. So this year, by faith, we will turn 5 years old. And I think from the very beginning, that seed was planted that we needed to really measure what we're doing. So it's been just a fantastic opportunity provided to us by the Overdeck Family Foundation and the Schusterman Family Foundation to, in fact, have the very best in the whole world help us measure the impact of our work in STEM. We couldn't have possibly had better friends and colleagues and partners in this work than Dr. Noam and Patty and Kristen. I think of it, you know, as inviting guests into our front living room and getting to tell our stories and hear each other tell the stories, and know that they were listening carefully to learn, you know, what's working well and what's not working so well in Tulsa, so that we could share and learn from the other ecosystems as well. Thanks to our very generous funders, this past year we were able to impact over 160,000 students and train more than 1,300 educators in the Oklahoma area. And it's just very, very rewarding to read the study that Dr. Noam and Kristen and Patty have put together, to see what someone from outside, yet really a close friend, comes and sees in our work and help us do an even better job. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Exanne. I am going to actually turn on the video, not because I think I'm so wonderful that everyone should see me, but more to kind of have a little more interaction when you kind of, you know, look at the slides, so that you have a sense of more. Can we do the next slide? So I'm not going to really talk much about the PEAR Institute anymore, because it was mentioned, and really mentioned nicely. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, and also, Exanne, thank you for your call out of our collaboration, which is a special collaboration. I think the main thing about the PEAR Institute and how I want to frame our discussion with you, our team's discussion with you, is that we are what is considered a kind of translational center. So it's a way in which we work very closely with communities, with individual schools, with after-school programs, with museums, really across the country. And now also with ecosystems, after we worked for 5 or 6 years and still are working with the Mott Foundation on the state networks. And the idea is always that we bring the best and the newest kind of the academic world, and then meld it with the practical needs of communities, and really engage with this, what was mentioned before, living data. So kind of really making all of us be more data oriented, but not with a kind of evaluation notion that everyone has to do this work, and at the end they kind of all are alienated, kind of figuring out, you know, have we made any progress or not, but really to figure out kind of what makes sense for each of the communities, each ecosystems. I very much think back to New Orleans, or NOLA. It was such a great conference, really. I just really loved every moment of it. And you know, a little shout out for Thais for organizing such a great conference. I mentioned that also when we were in New Orleans, but I think it hasn't, like, it's not one of those conferences that you leave and 5 minutes later you've forgotten it because you were kind of in the hotel that could be anywhere in the world. But it was really the setting that made a lot of the success. So I just want to end this introduction with mentioning two other things. The one is that PEAR or the PEAR Institute, which stands for Partnerships in Education and Resiliency, has two foundations, and one of them is SEL, or what we call SED, Socio-Emotional Development, 21st Century Skills, and the other one is STEM, and especially STEM in informal settings, but also as those informal settings reach into the school and the school day. And you know, now these things are coming together, and we're very excited about the field bridging and becoming kind of knowledgeable in the fact that we need STEM, we need a STEM workforce, we need a STEM knowledgeable citizenship, but we also at the same time need young people to be able to perform in companies and in college and elsewhere with some of the kind of big socio-emotional skills such as perseverance, critical thinking, problem solving, etc. And really the two are coming together quite beautifully. I said two things. That was one thing. The second thing is that I'd love you to be able to listen to this not so much from a kind of envy perspective, look what Tulsa can do and we're kind of not quite there yet, or we are as good as they are, or whatever. I don't think that was the intention at all. What this is yes, it is, Tulsa is amazing. They've done wonderful things. We can learn a lot. So part of that is what can we learn? But we could do these kinds of case studies in 20, 40, 50, 80 communities. Each time it would be different. Everyone would be at a different place, and that would be fine, and that would be great. So I think what we would like to do, and come back to that at the end, is the kind of method of case study, not just the case study for Tulsa. Tulsa gives us an example, and we really dug deep there. But we also want to talk to you about, is this methodology the right methodology to go to funders, to get support from policymakers, to really get your cities and communities, kind of the mayors and other people on board with a story that is being told, but a story that also is founded or based on or built on real data. And so that's how we want to now start, and Kristen will take us the next step.
Thanks, Gil. Really appreciate the introduction from Gil and Xan. Patty and I are here and excited to share not only a little bit around the kind of background and purpose of the case study, but a lot of great findings that we can share that Tulsa had happening, as well as we want you all to learn from. So just to reiterate, we are thrilled with the partnerships that we were able to have through doing this case study, and just wanted to anchor the conversation today on the kind of the timeliness of this case study, as well as all the great work that you are doing as ecosystems. It aligns so wonderfully with the release of the 2018 Federal 5-Year Strategic Plan for charting the course for success. The vision of that plan is really around promoting STEM literacy, innovation, and employment. And through their goals, kind of right at the forefront is partnerships in ecosystems. So obviously it aligns really well with the case study being done at this time and the importance of that work, but also really anchors to the importance of all the work that you are doing as ecosystems, which is amazing to think at this time up to 84. So just wanted to kind of give a little bit of background to anchor our conversation, and then getting into kind of the purpose of our case study. So how this case study came to be. So looking at the National STEM Learning Ecosystem Community of Practice, it's a well-established initiative, as you all know, entering its 5th year with 84 national and international communities, which I've had the pleasure of meeting so many at the Communities of Practice, which I just feel so fortunate to attend. But it really is timely with the work and the fact that this initiative is so well vested in going forward to really look at how different communities across the U.S. have implemented their ecosystems and how they're changing STEM learning models for education. Obviously, you all do a great job with your work, and I'm sure you're documenting that and reporting that, but to kind of formalize it and to look at one example and then use that for others to learn from is really the goal of what we were hoping to do. And as you can see from the slide, some areas that we focused on, we were really interested in looking at how the ecosystem formed, kind of that origin and the evolution. We are looking at how they're putting theory into action, kind of all the practices that are happening, how the TRSA as well as other ecosystems are doing that national strategy, looking at putting those strategies in place, looking at the impact that's happening in Tulsa, as well as sustainability that they're doing there, ways that they have successes put in place to promote sustainability, as well as exploring areas for improvement and guiding kind of continuous improvement on their side and change. You'll see here we have a reference to the long report that we have available, as well as the short report, which might be a little bit more digestible. But we're really hoping for this to be you all learning about Tulsa itself, as well as how you might apply this to your own ecosystem, as Dr. Noam had pointed out. So without sharing much of this slide, the real takeaway here is how Tulsa was selected as a location. And you'll see overall, looking at them being from cohort 1, the fact that they are capable of participating at this point. There is a wealth of data that Tulsa has collected and has shared with us, and we were able to document through our case study, as well as kind of engaged leading organization to help us. They were selected as one location. There's a few other ecosystem case studies that have happened as well. So they were really looking across geographically as well as kind of stages of implementation when it came to the case studies as examples to use. So the way that we look at the case study is really sharing the potential of what Tulsa, we're learning through Tulsa, can resonate with other communities throughout the US. Because Tulsa really is very similar to you all in the sense of the strengths and challenges that they're facing in STEM. Again, through the lens of today, hearing about the impact of Tulsa, but really looking at this from your own perspective of how you can learn from this. Again, thinking about Tulsa, it's not prescriptive in the design that they did for their ecosystem. Each ecosystem is unique, bringing different resources and design strengths and challenges for their implementation. So how would your ecosystem approach this different case study design or the collection of data to kind of guide practice? And to give background for us in terms of how the case study was designed, we really used the strategy for cultivating STEM ecosystems, the national strategies that are right here on this slide, to guide our case study and to really anchor our work. You'll see here it's about those being implemented in unique ways to your ecosystem, how you're establishing and sustaining cross-sector partnerships, how you're creating and connecting rich learning environments, equipping educators, and supporting youth to access pathways for future learning and careers. Really wanting to promote the mantra of the national strategies that there's no right way of implementing this. Each ecosystem will be unique. Really, the goal is for you all to embrace the values, beliefs, interests, and strengths of your community and how you look at doing implementation in your location. And we're really hoping that as you're hearing the results of Tulsa today, you're really able to keep in mind your own ecosystem model and how you're doing your implementation and reflecting on how you might collect data and look at that in an informative way. We really want you to take away looking at the strengths and the challenges of Tulsa, how they've done impact, how they've done practice, which Patty will get into in more detail. And just think, as Dr. Noam pointed out, about how case study might work in your ecosystem and what might be informative to you as an organization. And in addition to the 4 strategies that guided the case study, we were very interested in exploring partnerships. That's a key area for us. Obviously, it's a key area for the federal government right now for their 5-year plan. So we wanted to look more in depth to see how different sectors were joining together in ecosystems to transform STEM learning. So we applied this guiding partnership typology, which was presented by Dr. Noam and Tillinger in 2004, many years back. But you'll see here, there's 4 different stages of partnership that have been developed: opportunity-based, collaborative, interconnected, and transformational. So each of them have kind of unique stages. So obviously at the beginning of opportunity-based, it's really about sectors coming together and discovering where overlaps of interest might be. In this partnership style, again, Patty will give some more details about this applying to Tulsa, but just to give an overview, in opportunity-based, sectors are coming together, but it's more autonomous. You'll see on the circles on the slide, they're kind of connected through that square, but still functioning independently. They're really in a functional relationship, sharing knowledge and resources, but it's more opportunity for networking. Then we transition over to collaborative. So you'll see those arrows start pointing to each other and how they're kind of maybe starting to join together. They're developing common goals. They're getting to benefit mutually from each other's strengths and their experiences. And then there's a level of accountability that's starting to come into play because people are getting more interconnected with each other. Then we transition over to interconnected partnerships. You'll see that overlap happening with the circles, almost like kind of multiple Venn diagrams happening, where now sectors are coming together, they're overlapping, there's equal voices happening, there's clearer communication, there's a level of intimacy and joint decision-making that's happening amongst sectors that are participating here in the ecosystem. They're sharing programming and they're celebrating accomplishments. And lastly, we have transformational. This is really where changing of partners happen. In some instances, you know, missions and goals are changing. This is a very rare partnership type. In this one, it is very focused on not having hierarchy. It's very much discouraged. There's equal opportunity and involvement. It's an intermediary environment that's really promoting members accomplishing more together than they are doing it independently. Again, that is a challenging partnership level to attain, but we'll talk further about where Tulsa is fitting in at this point. And I'm going to transition over to kind of the meat of our presentation and to the key findings and lessons that Patty will review for us.
Hi, everybody. This is Patty. The second part of this presentation is focused on highlighting key findings that tell the story of Tulsa's ecosystem. And sharing examples of Tulsa's success is not meant to say that the path that TRSA took is the only way going forward or growing, evolving, and succeeding. But our hope is that all ecosystems can learn from the data and the lessons of Tulsa. So if I had a subtitle for this part 2, it would be Show Me the Data, What Can We Learn? So I want you to take a moment to look at this timeline that we've created. This is showing some of the major events in Tulsa's history and their development. Essentially, it's showing where did the TRSA begin, how have they changed, where are they now, and where are they going. If you look back to 2011, this is really where Tulsa's story as an ecosystem began, when the Schusterman Family Foundation became interested in the issues around STEM education and the economy in Tulsa and began to offer STEM-focused scholarships and awards to encourage more students to persist in STEM. And then the next major step toward the formation of the ecosystem was a design studio workshop event that was funded by 2 local foundations, including the Schusterman Family Foundation and the Tulsa Area United Way. It was initiated by the Oklahoma Innovation Institute and facilitated by TIES in the fall of 2003. This is where the momentum really began to pick up. The design studio was attended by folks from all over the community, all sectors, businesses, after-school, community organizations, K-12, and everyone was interested in talking about what was going on in STEM in Tulsa, you know, what was going well, where was Tulsa falling short, what could be improved. And the workshop really brought together different perspectives. It resulted in the creation of a logic model to guide the initiatives and activities, inputs, outputs, and really to document short and long-term goals and outcomes. And this effort was really successful, and it resulted in the launch of the TRSA in 2013 with governance and strategy blueprint, and this was finished in 2014. At the time, we call this phase incubation because the TRSA was supported by the Oklahoma Innovation Institute. It had 2 staff members, but it wasn't yet independent. And under XAN's leadership, the TRSA applied to join this initiative here, the SLECOP, as part of cohort 1, and they were accepted. So at that point, so really the timeline for ecosystems started in 2015, and this is where the TRSA's journey towards independence started, where they filed for a nonprofit status. This was granted in 2017 and activated in 2018. But suffice it to say, the development of the TRSA as an ecosystem took 5 years from incubation to independence. This is 2013 to 2018. And there were several key ingredients that cultivated the growth of the TRSA and Tulsa's ecosystem. You had motivated funders, a dynamic and motivational leader of the TRSA, a sense of urgency around STEM in the community, an event that had expert consultants who brought together a motivated group of folks together to articulate goals, and an action plan around STEM. And you might notice also on this timeline that we plotted engagement. I'm going to get into that later, but you can see that there's a growth in participation among youth in Tulsa's community, as especially if you look at the slope after Tulsa became an ecosystem, you're seeing more engagement of youth in STEM in the community, which is one of the signs of success that I'll get into shortly. I also want to mention that as the TRSA worked toward becoming an independent 5013C nonprofit, they established a vertical structure of governance with a board of directors, and this began around 2017. And they were refining many of their goals and responsibilities as their staff grew and their roles differentiated. But with the ecosystem's rapid scaling, its increasing independence, and its need for accountability, the TRSA created 7 paid staff positions and implemented this vertical structure that had many layers of management, which are shown here on your screen. So as of 2017, this board of directors really served as a governing body that was responsible for making high-level decisions about the organization, such things as visioning, long-term strategy, and finance. And this executive body has five subcommittees with experts from all sectors of community who are genuinely contributing to the organization. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I would love to tell you the many different ways that the TRSA has taken the national strategies, these 4 strategies that Kristen has told you, obviously you know about, but how did they actually put this into action in their ecosystem? We know this isn't prescriptive. You can interpret this in any way, and also it depends on the landscape of your community. So in the short and longer report, we go into far more detail, but I thought I would give a couple of examples of how the TRSA put these strategies into action. And this is an important question in our case study. We call it theory of action. And we found evidence that the TRSA is putting all 4 of the strategies in action. And so for example, first in the top left corner, this is where we're focusing on cross-sector partnerships. We know these are foundational to the growth and success of ecosystems, and the TRSA has really excelled in partnerships. It has a reputation as a convener, a networker, a bridge builder, a dot connector. The general membership of the TRSA now has more than 144 different organizations from all sectors of the community. And actually in 2018, 40 STEM-related events that occurred, 2 out of 3 of them involved 3 or more sectors. So for example, K-12, business, after school, working together to improve STEM teaching and learning in the community. Now, if we were to focus on these other 3 strategies, so take, for example, creating and connecting STEM-rich learning environments. So as one example of that, there's an organization known as Camp Lockridge. And this is an outdoor classroom that works with K-12 school districts. So during the school day, teachers bring students to this outdoor classroom to apply the learning that they're learning during the school day to their, just everyday life. So they're out there working in ponds, exploring trees and the environment. And the staff of Camp Lockridge is actually working with teachers to create activities that are that correspond with what students are actually learning in school at that time. As an example of how the TRSA is equipping educators to lead active learning in settings, there's a long-running professional development program called Sensational Science. This is helping educators become more confident and competent in science teaching standards, especially as the standards in Oklahoma are changing or have recently changed. And then as another example, they provide professional development that focuses on inquiry and problem-based pedagogy. Lastly, to support youth and access pathways, youth to access pathways and exploration for further careers. An example of that would be STEM cafes, which take place once a month before school starts, and STEM experts visit the schools to discuss their area's expertise, so it's an opportunity to engage. They also support a lot of different mentorship opportunities, such as Me and My Math Mentor. There's an Engineer Alliance for the Arts, Project Lead the Way mentors, and the STEM professionals have opportunities to work regularly with students to form relationships and provide positive influences and encouragement and guidance so that students get motivated to pursue STEM careers. So again, we go into this in far more depth and detail in the report. I would love to tell you again about the millions of different opportunities, but for this presentation, I wanted to delve a little bit deeper into partnerships, that very first strategy. And I mentioned that partnerships are foundational to STEM learning ecosystems. I know I don't have to tell you that, but there's power in partnerships, and no better approach to solving problems and challenges to STEM. Partnerships can harness strengths and abilities from different corners of the STEM learning ecosystem to help you create and scale innovations and solve complex challenges. They can also facilitate equity and increase opportunities for all. So using the partnership typology that Dr. Noam developed with a colleague, Dr. Tillinger, we explored Tulsa's typology, the ecosystem overall, as well as all of the individual ecosystems and their interactions with each other. It's extremely complex. Again, we also go into this in more detail in the report, but I guess, in summary, overall, we found that the ecosystem has gone well beyond opportunity-based partnerships to strong collaborative partnerships. And what we mean by this is that partners are working with the TRSA, they've developed common goals, They're mutually benefiting from one another's strengths and experiences, and they have established a level of accountability. However, we've also found that there's variability between sectors. So when we say sectors, we're talking about after school, businesses, K-12, community, family. So some sectors are more developed than others. And we mentioned that the TRSA is leading from the out-of-school time space. And they're really showing signs of interconnected partnership types. And this is where, you know, partners feel they have equal voices. There's clear communication, a level of intimacy and joint decision-making, and shared programming. And also, the group celebrates accomplishments. And there are a lot of factors that can affect the development and maintenance of partnerships, and as we've observed them in Tulsa. Staff turnover, for example, can reset some of the work that's been done to build strong relationships between the TRSA and school districts. And we also know that there's crisis and opportunity can shift the stages of partnership development. For example, when Tulsa was facing teacher strikes and school closures, families were struggling with childcare. They had to go to work, but they didn't have anywhere for their children to go. And the TRSA rallied to work with local churches and community organizations to provide engaging STEM opportunities and activities at these different churches and community organizations. So it's really amazing to see the shifts in partnerships and the, you know, becoming more developed, and then sometimes things happen, but it always leads to more opportunity. So now that's a lot. I'm just sharing. I'm now going to the space where I'm more comfortable, which is talking about growth, success, and sustainability in numbers. So this is our quantitative data. So again, this is just, you know, the 10,000-foot view to some signs of growth and success in Tulsa. I was just telling you all about partnerships, and there's been substantial growth in the number of partners since the TRSA became an ecosystem. So 188% growth since 2015. Engagement in STEM, as you saw on the timeline, we see almost 194,000 youth in 2018 were participating in STEM in some capacity. Now, this represents direct and indirect participation, meaning in events, programs, camps, and this means that there could be some students that are participating more than once. But still, this is documented very consistently and represents substantial growth since 2013. We also see a significant number of educators in professional development. You can see more than 1,300 in 2018, and also more than 300 STEM professionals serving as mentors in 2018. We also observed, or we analyzed the budget and saw significant financial growth of the TRSA. So since they became an ecosystem, more than 7,000% growth, with a currently a $1.1 million budget in dollars, $1 million budget in 2018. And so this leads to the ability to have, you know, create more partnerships, to expand activities, create new activities, hire new staff, provide more professional development, and continuously build more partnerships. And then the partnerships lead to more opportunities, more diversification in funding. So now we're going to shift to data that's not specifically the TRSA, but data that's focused on the programs that they're supporting. A lot of their work, especially in the after-school and summer programming space and informal learning space, they've invested so much professional development. They've also formed a community of practice around data, and this is a continuous improvement loop. The idea of not just putting data in a drawer, evaluating, and then forgetting about the results, but using data in real time to make changes to the learning environment, to the materials, to the way that activities are facilitated, to increase the quality of activities and also improve youth experiences. And so what I'm showing you here is a subset of after-school programs. This is a cohort that's been participating in using a student self-report survey known as the Common Instrument Suite, and they rate their experiences in their program that's supported by the TRSA. You know, for example, their levels of STEM engagement, career knowledge, career interest, STEM enjoyment, participation in activities, and STEM identity. And essentially what we're seeing from year to year, again, this can't be analyzed longitudinally because there are different programs that are participating in different years, but if we just consider trends, we're seeing these improvements in students' attitudes or their experiences of what they've learned, which is they're reporting more knowledge about STEM careers and knowing, what opportunities exist and are available to them. They're becoming more interested in STEM careers. They're enjoying STEM more and engaging STEM more. And actually, this last part, it looks like there's a dip in STEM identity, but when we actually remove programs that only serve children once a day or one time, that actually changes where identity goes up. So this is just one indication that, good things are happening in Tulsa programming. And we believe this is because of the investment that the TRSA and the ecosystem has made around a quality framework that's evidence-based, known as the dimensions of success. And we see here again, so I'm not going to go too much into detail because there's too much to say and not enough time, but what we're seeing is improvements in certain areas such as participation in STEM and also relevance of STEM activities, so connecting what's being learned to everyday life. And if I were just to jump forward, just looking at the trends for Tulsa, Oklahoma overall, compared to the national levels of program quality in STEM, we see a lot of areas of strength. So anything that's 3 or above is considered compelling evidence or reasonable to compelling evidence. So really you want to kind of look at the mean scores and, if it's above 3, then we're considering that really a good quality, level of quality. There are some areas that Tulsa is struggling with that is also persistently challenging in other areas throughout the country. So for example, reflection, thinking about content more deeply, relevance, which is connecting what's being learned to everyday life. So, there's a lot of strengths, but the work is still ongoing. And through the process of continuous improvement, the TRSA is helping support programs to increase these values so that students can have really positive, engaging experiences that hopefully will lead to them persisting academically and also in careers.
Hey, Patty, time check, three more minutes.
You got it. This is actually, I believe, my last slide, and then I'm going to pass it back to you and Kristen. This is just a word about academic performance in Tulsa overall. And the TRSA and the ecosystem is engaging K-12 school districts to improve academics and performance in science and math. If we were to plot, and what we did was plot the performance based on Oklahoma's final report card grades from 2013 to 2016. So when Tulsa became an ecosystem up until when the Oklahoma final report card actually changed. So we only have data to 2016. 2 school districts, the Tulsa Public Schools and Union Public Schools, are the 2 lines that are on the lower part of the graph. So they're performing lower than other school districts in the community, but it's stable. So I guess the point here is that we need to think about this as a system and the connection. Is there a way to connect after school with schools to help support and see if the needle will move in terms of academic performance? But this is stable at this time. And so the idea is, how can Tulsa and other ecosystems leverage what they're doing to see changes in performance and other indicators at a systems level?
Perfect.
So with
Kristen,
I bring it back to Kristen and Gil to talk about lessons, strengths, and opportunities.
Okay, Kristen, we have, in order to allow for enough discussion with the people on the call, we have literally 3 minutes between us.
Absolutely. Many of these points have been highlighted already. I'm going to give one moment on this screen for people just to do a quick review of the areas where obviously the TRSA has had many fertile elements to contribute to their growth and sustainability. And we're going to quickly click right over to areas for opportunities for growth. Obviously, TRSA has many areas that they've established very well, but they still have growth areas to learn from, as every ecosystem does. So I'm going to wait here for one moment on this slide for people just to do a quick review. Again, these are gone into a lot more depth in the report, and feel free to go there. And then I'm going to transition, coming over to having Gil jump back on the line and kind of conducting case studies in research, both here, and we have one other additional slide, Gil, if you'd like to review both of those.
Well, now that I've, given us 3 minutes together, I will, keep the time, myself. And by the way, I mean, just so you know, in the background here, I'm in a hotel in Dallas where the YUSA invited data people to a small conference. It's called Making Meaning of Data. So it's very similar to what we're talking about here. The only thing that I'd like to just bring up, and thank you, Patty and Kristen, for really great presentations. I think they were very lucid, and we could spend much more time, obviously, on all the data. But really, the discussion we'd like to have with you is, how can you actually think about a case study? What is the difference between just general data analysis, and evaluation and case studies? And, rather than kind of giving you my own opinion right now, I think you can tell that a case study has a lot of narrative. It has a kind of storyline. It's almost like a movie, even though it's, maybe there are no murders, fortunately, and no, thrilling kind of moments that come up. But what does come up in the data is a lot of things that one can actually go deeper with than typical data analysis. And, the interviews that Kristen and Patty conducted with the main players were just really super important to kind of piece together this story. So I'd love to give us a chance to talk, and yeah, here you can see yet another slide, and this is was our state of mind. Whenever I went into Kristen's office and Patty's office, that's exactly what it looked like. And for this to become coherent, I think we recommend that as you tell your own story, that there's a history, there's really figuring out what data is available. There's the question of, who can fund this, and what funding is available, what is the culture that people have around data, and what are the resources and capacity that you have on your team to do some of this. I mean, I think we're not saying everyone should do a case study, but we also didn't want to be on the side of, you have to have a lot of money in order to do this, but is there a way in which we can also support your work, maybe through a kind of little manual or something like that, that could tell you how you would do this yourself or how you would do this with your evaluator. Okay, with that, let's go into a discussion. Yeah, we always like you to contact us with any questions. We will put up the address in a second again.
Great. So actually, we have quite a few questions that have come in. Thank you all so much for the wonderful presentation. Apologies that we had to rush through sort of some of the ends. And for all of you on the line, the study is available for everybody to read on the internal site, and we'll make sure that it's available for you as we send out the recording. But if we want to go ahead and dive right into questions, as several have come in. The first question, can you elaborate on how the number of youth participating in events was measured from origin and evolution side? It seems critical in measuring the growth of an ecosystem. I know you covered a little bit of this. I don't know if there's any additional youth participation in events measurement that you wanted to clarify before we move to the next question.
Is it okay to have a couple of questions, 2 or 3 that might be kind of informational questions that we can bundle?
Sure. There is another one too that was curious with the timeline graph, also around youth participating in events. And so there was a question about some youth were participating in events during this time. Does this mean that the count is based on Tulsa branded events? I think folks are still trying to understand in their own ecosystem what, air quote counts as an ecosystem event. And so understanding a little bit about how you were counting students' participation in an event based on whether it was a Tulsa event or just an event happening in the community.
Perfect. Those sound great. Some of them should be XN, but we should probably start with Patty or Kristen.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So these numbers, the TRSA does an amazing job of documenting this information and putting it on their website, a lot of transparency. And so what we did was reach out to Xan and her data analyst for the TRSA to get the numbers, and our understanding that this is direct and indirect participation in events, programs, and camps. So it's head counts based on like the registration to events of any event, program, or camp that the TRSA helped to organize or partnered with organizations on. So as an intermediary, they have a lot of touch throughout the community, but certainly I'm sure Xan could explain a little bit more about their methodology for, you know, doing head counts or getting the registration enrollment numbers. And you also have to remember that they work with a lot of organizations and do a lot of events, not only within Tulsa City proper or the county, but it could be even across Oklahoma, like a major event like Flight Night, where some of them are even these huge community-wide field day type of events or kind of a county fair type of event. So if you imagine on that level, but unfortunately these counts don't allow for, you know, if students are attending multiple events, because there certainly are families that will attend multiple events. So this is just kind of the number of participation. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think Patty did a great job. Some of them are students who directly come to our event. Some of them are indirect because it's a teacher that we've trained or a teacher that we've given resources to, who then in turn goes back to her class or his after school program. Or some of them are areas where we've had the ability to do an RFP for after school programming or an RFP for summer camps. So it's all either, as you said, either TRSA branded or TRSA is a partner in this event.
Great. And just one more question that came in sort of as you were talking with this that's related to youth participation. There's a question about how you were able to correlate the data with academic performance. Were you able to track at the student level versus the overall district report card and students that were participating in those events and their academic performance?
We were not able.
Go ahead, you're the expert.
Oh, no, well, I should say you are the expert, Xan. I'll just say from the data that we have, so for example, these academic performance data come from public-facing websites, publicly available data that we can download. But a lot of this information, actually this is an important point, which is that not every child in, for example, Union Public School or Tulsa Public School has engaged in an activity that was supported by the TRSA. So these aren't perfect. And I know this is a direction that the TRSA and the ecosystem in Tulsa overall is going toward to connect school data with after school, out of school time data, but that's not something that we had available to at the time of this case study.
Xan, do you want to add to that?
I think that's great. You know, as we've talked about before, this thing moves at the speed of trust. And so as we build relationship, we're able to have access to more data, higher quality data, and more longitudinal data. Right now we have direct access to our Me and My Math Mentor students' MAP test scores. And beyond that, we're working with Impact Tulsa to begin to really track at the student level across our programs.
I mean, also for anyone to, I don't know, am I muted? No. ERP, and we have had a couple of discussions about this very question because they have a lot of data and know how to kind of get data on the district level. And we have a lot of experience with doing that in the out of school time, especially museums, summer programs, after school programs. So I think we need to find ways where we can connect it all the way down to a student. Because the one thing that you can see here is that with all the efforts on the out of school time side, especially at Tulsa Public Schools, the lines are very flat, and we gotta figure out how to kind of change that. I mean, really, Tulsa Public School has to, and I know that they're really committed to this work. So, and I know it's really super hard to do, but ultimately, if we really are ecosystems, we gotta, you know, deepen that and go all the way to the individual child.
I just want to mention that You reminded me that the appendix of the full report, there is the correlation that was done by a different research group that connects me and my math mentor academic data to the effect of the program on achievement. So definitely check that out in the appendix.
Perfect. Okay,
Great.
any other comments, questions?
Yes, we have quite a few questions. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit away from youth participation data. There's quite a few questions that are structurally related. So there are a few questions, and I'll group these together and you can decide how you want to, they might be more directed towards exam, but people are wondering about how you pitched the design studio work and sort of those initial phases of the work to the United Way and other funders to get the funding. A lot of people have experienced that funders want to support more programmatic efforts and less around planning and infrastructure. I will also group this question in there about, you know, what was the turning point about when they became an ecosystem, when you became an ecosystem, how it is in the current form, and how did the fake it till you make it and the small victories along the way contribute to that? And if you could highlight a few of those.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I do feel a little bit like it's chicken and egg. If you can have a little bit of some programming to show that, you know, you are in this game, it helps. But I think in Tulsa, we have such incredible partners that they were willing to, you know, put down a bet, so to speak, that if we were to pull together, we could dramatically shift what we're able to do as far as what's going on in STEM, what would we like to have going on in STEM. They bought into the fact that if we work together, we could build an organization to address that gap of what we would like to have going on in STEM for our students and our educators.
Okay, great, thank you. So there is a slide about community connections. And so this question is, if I understand that slide correctly, it seems that there's room for evolution. Did I hear that Tulsa is currently in the collaborative stage after nearly 10 years, and is that typical?
It's funny to say, is it typical? I mean, I'd have to defer to Gil on his work with a lot of after-school environments and partners, but this is the first time we've used it in the ecosystem, so I can't say whether or not it's typical for ecosystems. It certainly seems very fast to me, but Gil, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't put Tulsa, it's like an evolutionary systemic kind of perspective, and it's not like putting, you know, a whole organism or, you know, into a bucket, you know. And I also think that there's a lot of evidence of interconnectedness, of being kind of more inclusive. The reason why there's a collaborative element that is very important is that it's very institutional. I mean, they created a 501c3, they have, you know, boards, it's clear kind of who does what. But it always has struck me from all the visits and from all the communication and from also exam's style and the leadership kind of group that, you know, connects to funders, that they're really in this integrated system between interconnected and collaborative. And also the other thing to know is any system, you know, when it's stressed or when there's suddenly a new opportunity, can very easily go back to the opportunity based. And, you know, you already have a few kind of inklings of transformational, where really the partners are changing each other. Whether something kind of is fast or slow, I don't think, first of all, we don't really have enough data, but having lived in a lot of institutions and having applied this and having observed things, I think growth is very slow and it's very hard. And usually people don't use this in order to say, well, let's go to the next level. This is like, you know, the evolution is usually organic. So, you know, it's not even clear whether really ecosystems have the aspiration of becoming transformational with each other. Do you know what I mean? It's not like that is the place everyone wants to be. So in terms of 10 years, it is to get a 10-year process where you really create an intimate, connected, trusting group, the speed of trust Xan said before, and you have a system that really coordinates itself well and has moved from a bunch of programs all the way to a 501c3, I see that as a really very big shift. And even if it takes 10 years, it's very big.
Great, thank you. I don't know if others have anything to add to that. Otherwise, I'm going to shift gears again in our questioning.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Because we only have 4 minutes.
4 minutes. So we're going to talk. I know it was mentioned that the longitudinal data and access to that has been difficult, but there is a question from San Antonio asking, do you have data on the number of students who have completed STEM degrees in 2011 by gender and demographics, and then say in 2017 to compare the impact of TURSA and the number of STEM graduates in local institutions?
We did not have that data available. We weren't able to get a hold of that information. At least it wasn't publicly available from what we were able to find. But Xan, please let us know, because no, Gil doesn't want us to have more data. We get trapped at. We love it so much. But Xan, do you know of any data that are available?
I believe in 2016, our State Department of Education released data that there was a 30% increase in the number of students entering, or interested in STEM degrees. As might be the case in other areas of the country, the percent that finished with a STEM degree is the challenge. And so that's, our meat and potatoes work. Maybe the first phase is getting students engaged and interested, but then sure as can be, our real work, another part of our work is equipping students and empowering students so that they can finish with those STEM degrees.
Okay, great. So maybe we'll end with this question, and Alyssa, this might be one for you and Dr. Noam and everybody to answer, but I know Dr. Noam, you mentioned in New Orleans that you really want to make, and again at the beginning of this webinar, that you really want to make this type of data collection and case study available for the ecosystems. And so a few ecosystems are inquiring if they want to do a case study, at what stage should they get started in that process? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that.
Dr. Noam, are you going to go first? Yeah.
Am I what? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Did someone else want to answer? Because I can wait. Okay, so I'll just. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
Okay. I'm a little confused whether I'm supposed to talk or not talk, but I guess since there's silence, I will talk. I think that we have to distinguish between the writing of a case study and the setting in motion a case study. The setting in motion, to start with that, is really organizing data, keeping note of your meetings, having things available, having people ready to kind of be interviewed. So a lot of the data collection was kind of our using what Tulsa had available. So that's the foundational part, because without data, it's hard to write a case study, obviously. And the more it can be qualitative and quantitative, that's great. In terms of writing one, I think that's in some ways both a financial issue, which is how much money do you have? And I think we did a pretty extensive case study with some funding that we received, but one can do less than what we did. And you could actually start relatively early, and it can look like an annual report to your community and to your funders, where you use some of the templates that we created and like start filling in some of the information that you have. So you don't have to wait for years and years till you have like this enormous story to tell, but you can do it every year. And in every year, you can actually summarize kind of your progress. And at some point you say, okay, now we have enough to really do something that can be a 10, 20 page report that we take extremely seriously, and then kind of push it out and give it to everyone that's possible. For that, you will need some funding, or if you do it totally internally, you need someone who has enough time to do this work. I also think the last thing is that it is good to have some of the data collection that we recommend. I mean, some of the out of school time, but also school. You saw some of the data that the report showed. It wasn't just objective data, but kind of attendance and numbers, but it was also like quality of programming and student outcomes. So we strongly recommend, and you should really talk to us and also to ERP, how they can help and how we can help you kind of create the data system that you need in order to tell a very compelling story.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was a really terrific way, I think, to close this webinar. We are at time now. So on behalf of sort of the STEM Learning Ecosystems management team, we really want to thank all of you at the PEAR Institute and Exam at Tulsa Regional STEM Alliance for opening up your home and letting us sit at your kitchen table and understand a little bit more about the wonderful things that you've done there in Tulsa, and understanding, the great work that's being done there. Also want to thank, obviously, Overdeck Family Foundation and STEM Next Opportunity Fund and the Schuster Noam Family Foundation for all the contributions that they've made in making this possible and allowing us as a larger ecosystem community to see this great work in action. So thank you so much, everyone, for their time. If there are questions that we did not get to, we will make sure to answer those offline, and we thank you again and hope you have a great afternoon.
Yeah,
take care, everyone.
Be in touch with us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.